Hi and good evening, everyone. My name is Albert, and this is Vlogs About Nothing. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your night to join me. I really appreciate it. It's just your boy working away at that goal of 1,000 videos by the end of the year, and that means 4 videos a day from here till then. And if you're doing the math at home, like 5 videos for 6 days or something like that. I keep trying to do it in my head, and then I get bored and over it, so I move on. Tonight, I want to talk about willful ignorance, and that's kind of an example of being willfully ignorant. However, my willful ignorance, as I would argue, explicitly only concerns my own individual self and thereby my experience. I don't think willful ignorance is something that any of us should be proud of or openly ready to talk about as it concerns the state of the modern world. And I dare say that every American out there, right? There may not be a billion of us, there may not be a half a billion of us, but there definitely are a few 100 million. And I definitely would say that most of all of us, and the with the exception of children and people that can't think too much about like their state because of bad health problems or whatever. I mean, we all are pretty willfully ignorant. And I think a lot of us don't want to talk about it. Like, we're all just cool with being willfully ignorant. And in fact, link in the description below, there's a really interesting video that talks about this very phenomenon, because that's exactly what it is. People should care about stuff, and we are constantly provided with the anecdotal information that one might need to essentially change our decision making by changing our behavior because we know something is wrong with that particular product or person. And it talks about Canada Goose in this particular video. Again, link in the description below. But it's a pretty good example in that Canada Goose actually sold many, many times more jackets and product when they sold questionable, unsustainable animal fur, goose down, and wolf, so that wolf hair, wolf fur on the tops of the hoods and stuff. And then when they went sustainable, actually were just slow in growth by comparison to how they were in years before. Meaning that when people are presented with information and they actively forget, and this is kind of where the video didn't touch. I am convinced that most of us know exactly what we're doing. You know, the difficult thing about social sciences and psychology and sociology is that really studies are only able to determine and algorithms thereby. And this is why I guess people think everything's a mystery, because our species is very social, and by contrast, and in contrast, I'd rather to being social, I'd say that we're also very secretive, and that none of us really like to talk at all about what's going on, even when we know exactly what's going on. And we will be the first people to tell you, if we're being shamelessly honest about things, that we don't want to remember bad things. We actively choose to forget them, and that it makes us feel uncomfortable. It questions our sort of place in the universe, and it really does have a major impact on a person's facilities as it concerns their mental health, you know? And so, yeah, I mean, everyone owns an iPhone, but also everyone kind of knows that child labor is used to make them, and yet it's still the most popular phone in the world. Like, but most of the people that buy these products, we all know. And the thing is studies only hint and they only get at information that's admitted to and or available. So if all of us just go around saying that it's just very convenient that we actively forget terrible things about companies that literally reside within the confines of every reaching distance and waking moment in our lives, that's a big disconnect. Like, a huge disconnect. Like, seriously, somebody will inevitably argue in the future that there's something wrong with all of us for choosing to be willfully ignorant, because we choose to actively forget all of the bad things that happen, continue to happen, and or currently happening, all so that we can feel better about ourselves. We actively forget on purpose. Forgetting is one thing. Trying to forget is something our brain does to protect ourselves. Trying to forget to remind ourselves that we need to feel good instead of being reminded of the inconvenient truth is just all super sus, isn't it? Don't people go through great lengths to justify the unjustifiable? And it doesn't have to be religion, it doesn't have to be secular, it doesn't have to be governmental. We do this on the daily in our each and every individual life circumstances. It doesn't matter if it's our decision. If you were reminded at the Apple store that people, human little children, were used, places, companies that have to put suicide nets on the sides of buildings so their employees don't jump off and unalive themselves as a result of these poor working conditions, you might actually change a lot of people's minds. Now, moreover, because human beings are convenient species in that we might just choose to be super selfish, forget that we're reminded at point of sale, go on down to the next Apple shop to see if that person doesn't have a conscience and reminds us, which again isn't it interesting how like all of us in life set our own determinist, like our own values as it concerns ethics and stuff, but then we literally seek out unethical people in certain industries to conduct certain kinds of practices for us because we don't want to be unethical. So like while we not might, for a good example is, while we may not want to be monsters, right? And I feel like wealthy people use this as like a lot, right? Is we may not be monsters, right? I might not be this way, but my lawyer doesn't feel this way. I mean, isn't that like a super convenient rich person thing to say as it concerns defending the self? And I think it speaks more on over to the access of resources to ensure that the self feels safe and secure in that environment. And all I'm saying is that I think it's pretty interesting. I am not to be excluded from this. While I've actively maintained some of the stances, most of the stances I've always had and will always have, I also choose to be willfully ignorant. Because if I choose not to be willfully ignorant, then, I mean, I just, my days wouldn't go very well. And I say this, publicly, openly, and I talk about real tough stuff. You don't think I think about this stuff that we talk about? I mean, that would be real difficult. That would be a disconnect. That would not be normal. But, I do. And it's, again, some almost like there's a reason why newscasters or news reporters don't report the real news, and why they're guided to do so from a script, and they do actual no real journalism, and it is in fact considered entertainment. And that's because a person, how many moderators out there have worked at Facebook and have had to see images of things that got flagged or illegal things. I mean, it's obviously not to that extent, but I would say that definitely being willfully ignorant is it's just, it's we're just as guilty as the people that are employing children to make chips to put in Apple iPhones. I mean, and I think that we work real hard to find reasons to justify why we don't actively do something about Apple making phones from child labor. I mean, why don't we do something about it? We know about it. We still buy their stuff. Why don't we do something about it? And I guess, like, if that was like a real question, I guess the answer would be like, they have a lot of money and stuff. Like, it's just, isn't it weird how, like, even when you defend or you try to defend these indefensible things, that you just end up finding yourself in this situation where you just would rather not talk about it. It's cool. I don't agree with child slavery and child, working and stuff, but but Apple, donates $5 billion every 5 years to underdeveloped nations. Does that outweigh the cost of child labor on a daily for my iPhone? The answer, unfortunately, for the good majority of all of us Americans, if we, are choosing making decisions based on purchasing power is that yes, that Apple being a philanthropic and cool and chic little company and here in America, that's reason enough to defend some of the allegations. One might even make that bold statement, right? They are allegations. No court of law has ever in America convicted the Apple Corporation of employing children or having unsafe work conditions, but like we all know that both of those things are not true. So like I guess I'm just as willfully ignorant by honest opinion as honest fact as everyone else is, but my question is like, you know, is it paranoia? Like, why don't we do something about it? Like, are we afraid? Like, I guess it's out of fear, right? So, like, what am I afraid of? Like, I mean, I can't do anything. I guess that's the response too, right? Like, I can't do anything. I mean, what am I going to do about it? Well, I don't know. I guess we could, like, speak the truth in conversations that we have in our lives, and we can choose to be honest instead of choosing to be willfully ignorant. I don't know. I guess that's where the change would have to start. It would have to start with you in terms of like, and me, everybody, and just being more open about discussing the hard truths and moreover, not just what's true, but what to do about it. So, like, what do we do about this problem? We know it's a problem. What do we do about it? What can we do about it? I don't think is a good question to ask because you might come up with nothing. It's just still, it's tough. You know, what's even more tough is when we live in a world where the government doesn't regulate that kind of crazy behavior, you know, because that's crazy. Government should not ever be interested in having such divisiveness within its own population unless it in fact also directly benefited the government. So, yeah, you know, the government is integral, people, in all of our lives. And in fact, it's the only thing that can change your life. It really is. Apple's not going to change it. I mean, they might be able to change it, but they're going to charge you for it. It's a private service. Thank you very much. And you're still going to get it from the same people that sold it to you 20 years ago that are sourcing it from the same places that embody the same kinds of practices that they were busted for by Amnesty International 20 years ago. I mean, there are now lifelong customers of this brand. There are customers who weren't even alive then that, you know, worship this particular product, like while before they were being born they were being accused of massive human rights allegations, like things that they were doing wrong. And so I don't know why people are willfully ignorant. I don't know why we continue to let bad things happen and we just talk about them and choose not to do anything. We choose to talk about the need for healthcare, but definitely don't do anything about nationalizing healthcare. We choose to talk about the homeless population, and yet we choose to not pass any real meaningful legislation to help them. We want people, we at least all say that we do. We all say on the surface we want people to do well for themselves and live their best lives. But we get super jealous when somebody cuts us off or somebody looks at us weird at the grocery store. I mean, these are the fallacies of being a Homo sapien, and especially one given the environment of which that you could argue America provides, which is, again, good, super good in some instances, and just outright wrong in others. And we're going to talk about some of those things here in the upcoming videos. So I hope that you guys have a really good night, and thanks for watching my videos. Bye!